There is a strange kind of suffering that appears only after a person wakes up. It does not arrive with noise or drama. It slips in quietly, the way early morning light reveals the dust floating in a room that looked clean in the dark. You begin to notice things others no longer see. You sense the tension behind the practiced smiles. You feel the heaviness in conversations where every word has been polished smooth to avoid honesty. Nothing dramatic happens, yet something inside you feels pulled out of place. Most people move through the world as if they are part of a painted crowd. Their expressions match, their voices blend, their stories line up in neat rows. This creates a kind of comfort, a shared rhythm that keeps life predictable. But when awakening begins, you feel that rhythm falter. The paint on the faces around you appears too bright. The movements feel rehearsed. The smooth edges hide fractures that your heart picks up instantly. A moment comes when you try to join in as you always did. You nod when expected. You laugh when everyone else laughs. You play the role you have played for years. Yet something inside you resists. It feels like wearing clothes that no longer fit, stitched from fabric that irritates the skin. What once passed for connection now feels like an echo of a conversation that never touches the ground. This is where the suffering begins. Not because you are broken, not because you have lost your place. You suffer because you can no longer pretend that the painted world is real. The colors no longer match the truth you feel rising within you. And once this truth appears, it refuses to return to silence. Imagine a society built like a grand festival where everyone is expected to wear a costume. Not a playful costume, but one tied tightly to their worth. Each mask shines with confidence, charm, ambition, or certainty. The brighter the surface, the more applause it receives. From the outside, this world seems lively and beautifully arranged. Yet beneath the noise lies an unspoken rule that guides everything you see. The rule is simple. Pretend well, and you will be rewarded. Show your true face, and you will confuse the crowd. Most people learn this rule early. They step into the festival and discover that sincerity is too slow to win attention. Vulnerability is too raw to fit the tempo. Depth is too quiet to rise above the music. So they learn to smile on cue. They learn to say what is expected. They learn to present a version of themselves that draws approval. Over time, the costume no longer feels like a performance. It becomes a second skin. A spiritually awake person cannot move this way. The costume begins to feel heavy. The mask feels tight around the breath. The applause seems hollow because it is not meant for who they truly are. The more awake they become, the more clearly they notice the distance between what people display and what they actually feel. This is not a judgment. It is a sensitivity that grows naturally when the mind becomes honest with itself. The world rewards pretending because pretending keeps everything running smoothly. If everyone paused to feel, the speed of society would unravel. If everyone stopped performing, the structures built on image would no longer make sense. So the culture teaches people to polish their surfaces. It teaches them to hide their uncertainty. It teaches them to act like they know where they are going, even when they feel lost. A person who awakens steps out of this current without meaning to. They stop chasing the rewards that once motivated them. They lose interest in the roles that used to define them. Something inside begins to ask questions that break the rhythm of the festival. Why do we bow to expectations that exhaust us? Why do we chase praise that never satisfies? Why do we call masks connection? These questions move them to the edge of the crowd where the lights feel too bright and the music feels too loud. They see how much of the culture depends on people forgetting themselves. They see how pretending has become a form of survival. And they see, with a kind of quiet sorrow, that many people do not know how much of their inner life they have covered up. This clarity does not make the awakened person superior. It simply makes them unable to participate in the festival. In the same way, their eyes no longer follow the choreography. Their heart no longer tolerates the script. They begin to understand that authenticity carries its own cost in a world that values performance above truth. Daily life becomes a quiet test for the spiritually awake. Nothing on the surface appears unusual. The same conversations unfold. The same routines repeat. The same familiar people smile and greet you as they always have. Yet something inside responds differently now. You feel the subtle weight behind ordinary moments in a way that others do not notice. At work, you sit in meetings where everyone praises a project that clearly needs more time. The enthusiasm feels rehearsed, as if each person is reading from a script they memorized long ago. You listen to the compliments and sense the fear beneath them, the fear of being the first to speak honestly. You feel a tightness in your chest, not because you disagree, but because you cannot match the cheerful performance. Your silence becomes its own kind of discomfort, even though it is the only thing that feels real. With friends, you gather around stories that once made you laugh. Now the laughter sounds thin, as if the room is echoing rather than responding. You notice the moments when someone avoids saying what they truly feel. You sense the tension behind the smiles that linger too long. You hear the longing underneath the casual jokes. These observations arrive uninvited, and you wish you could turn them off, yet they come anyway. In your family, there are conversations carefully wrapped in politeness. Everyone tries to maintain harmony, but you feel the weight of what goes unsaid. You notice the small hesitations, the forced reassurances, the quiet fatigue behind each attempt to keep peace. You want to speak honestly, yet you know honesty would shake the balance others work so hard to protect. Even in love, something shifts. You can no longer pretend to be the version of yourself someone else imagines. You cannot trade authenticity for comfort. You cannot participate in a relationship built on roles that do not fit. This clarity sets you apart, not out of pride, but out of necessity. The suffering of the awake person does not come from seeing darkness. It comes from seeing the truth in places where others choose reflection over reality. It comes from feeling deeply in rooms where depth is quietly discouraged. And it comes from knowing that once you have seen clearly, you cannot return to the painted world you once helped maintain. There are several forces within modern culture that make life unusually painful for those who are spiritually awake. These forces are subtle. They do not announce themselves. They move quietly beneath conversations, decisions, and expectations. Yet once you begin to see them, the pattern becomes unmistakable. The suffering does not come from awakening itself. It comes from colliding with a world that is organized around a different set of rules. One force is the inability to unsee what has been revealed. Most people move through the day guided by assumptions that keep life simple. They trust that words match intentions. They accept that politeness equals peace. They believe that shared enthusiasm reflects shared meaning. An awakened mind cannot hold these assumptions anymore. You notice the strain behind cheerful expressions. You sense the hidden motives inside confident statements. You feel the gap between what people say and what they truly need. This clarity becomes a burden when everyone else appears to agree on a version of reality that your heart can no longer support. You feel out of rhythm, as if you are hearing a faint note beneath the music that no one else acknowledges. Another force is the way honesty disrupts the social environment. In a culture that rewards polished surfaces, sincerity becomes a quiet disturbance. A simple, truthful sentence can change the direction of a room. A pause before answering can make others uncomfortable. A refusal to join in artificial enthusiasm can feel like an interruption, even though it is not meant to challenge anyone. People often interpret authenticity as criticism because they have grown used to navigating conversations through subtle performances. When you do not play along, your presence exposes the tension others work hard to hide. You are not intending to reveal anything. You are simply standing still in a place where others are constantly adjusting their masks. A third force is the refusal to participate in games of competition built on pretending. Many cultural rewards depend on presenting a refined version of yourself. People rise by projecting certainty, even when they feel lost. They advance by echoing popular views, even when they disagree. They form alliances by mirroring the emotions of those around them. A spiritually awake person cannot do this for long. The inner self rejects the performance. The body tightens when forced to pretend. The mind grows restless when asked to pursue goals that contradict deeper values. As a result, the awakened person often appears slow, unambitious, or detached in environments that value speed, ambition, and conformity. The world mistakes integrity for hesitation and authenticity for weakness. A fourth force comes from the way awakened presence amplifies the inner world of others. People sense when someone near them is not playing along. They feel exposed even when no words are spoken. Something in them recognizes that this person is seeing from a deeper place. This recognition can create uneasiness. Some people withdraw, others become defensive. A few may even project their discomfort onto the awakened person, calling them strange, distant, or overly serious. The truth is simpler. The awakened person is not demanding anything. They are simply not feeding the illusions that make others feel temporarily secure. These forces work together to create a kind of friction. You move through the world with a quieter rhythm, but the world moves with a practiced momentum. Your clarity touches the edges of things others prefer to keep blurred. Your presence interrupts the choreography they rely on. None of this is intentional. None of it is personal. It is the natural tension between seeing clearly and living among people who must, for their own comfort, keep certain truths slightly out of focus. There is a moment in every awakening when the suffering begins to take on a new shape. At first, you think the pain comes from seeing too much. You believe that if you could soften your vision or dull your awareness, life would return to its old familiar rhythm. Yet the truth waits quietly beneath that belief. The suffering does not come from seeing. It comes from what you try to do with what you see. Most people imagine that clarity requires action. If you notice a pattern, you try to fix it. If you sense dishonesty, you try to bring truth into the room. If you feel someone's discomfort, you try to ease it. This instinct feels noble. It feels compassionate. It feels like the right response to awareness. But awakening is not a call to repair the world. It is an invitation to understand the world. The difference is subtle yet vast. Consider a mirror placed in a foggy room. The mirror reflects whatever stands before it, but the air is filled with mist that blurs the images. People in the room may not realize the fog is there. They believe the blurriness comes from the mirror. They wipe at the surface, assuming the mirror is flawed. Yet the mirror is untouched. The fog belongs to the room, not the reflection. When you are spiritually awake, you become like that mirror. You reflect reality with quiet accuracy. Others see themselves in your presence and assume something is wrong with you, because the reflection does not match their preferred image. And you, wanting to help, may begin wiping yourself clean, believing you can remove the fog for them. This is where the suffering deepens. You cannot remove someone else's fog. You cannot clear the air they depend on to hide from themselves. You cannot force clarity into a mind that is not ready to hold it. And every attempt to do so pulls you further from your own center. The more you try to fix the pretending around you, the more entangled you become in the same pretending. You begin to perform the role of the healer, the guide, the corrector. Yet these roles are only new versions of the old mask you worked so hard to shed. Awakening reveals that your task is not to intervene. Your task is to stand steady in what is true without asking the world to match you. This does not mean indifference. It does not mean withdrawal. It means understanding that clarity is not a tool for controlling others. Clarity is a way of being, not a way of managing life. You serve others best, not by adjusting their masks, but by refusing to wear one yourself. When you stop trying to correct the culture of pretending, something shifts. The suffering loses its sharpness. You no longer feel responsible for the distortions you observe. You no longer take ownership of the emotional landscapes that do not belong to you. You learn to let the fog be the fog. You allow people to keep their stories until they are ready to release them. You recognize that life has its own timing, and awakening cannot be rushed into the heart of someone who still seeks comfort in illusion. This realization creates a kind of inner spaciousness. You breathe more freely. You move through situations that once overwhelmed you with a calmer presence. You accept that truth does not need defenders. Truth needs witnesses. And you learn to witness without demanding that the world see through your eyes. In that quiet shift, the suffering softens. The world remains the same, yet your relationship to it changes. You discover that awakening was never about escaping the culture of pretending. It was about remembering that your clarity does not require the permission of the world around you. It only requires your willingness to stand in it. Awakening becomes gentler when it begins to take shape in daily practice. You do not need complex rituals or long hours of stillness. You need only a way to return to yourself in a world that constantly invites you to drift away. Small practices hold surprising power. They help you move through the culture of pretending without losing the truth you carry. One simple practice begins with a single breath. When the day feels crowded with expectations, pause for a moment and follow one breath from beginning to end. As you inhale, notice the tension that rises in your chest. As you exhale, allow one false expectation to loosen its grip. You do not need to name it. You do not need to fight it. You simply let the breath show you where you are holding something that is not yours. This practice teaches you to recognize the difference between inner truth and borrowed pressure. Another practice involves creating a quiet room inside your awareness. Imagine a small space within you that no one else can enter. This room has no audience, no roles, no need to impress. You step into it whenever you feel pulled toward pretending. Even a brief visit changes the texture of your day. You leave the room with your center restored, carrying a steadiness that helps you move through situations that once felt overwhelming. The more often you return, the more natural authenticity becomes. There is also the practice of gentle observation. When you find yourself in a conversation where the performance is obvious, do not resist it. Notice how people shape their words to fit expectations. Notice how the room shifts according to unspoken rules. Notice how you feel without judging your reaction. This observation creates distance between your awareness and the pressure to perform. You learn that you can witness the pretending without becoming part of it. All these practices share the same purpose. They remind you that awakening is not about changing the world around you. It is about strengthening your ability to remain true in the midst of it. You learn to hold your clarity without forcing it. You learn to let others move at the pace they need. You learn to breathe through moments that once tightened your heart. With time, these small acts become a way of living. They help you stay grounded in who you are, even when the culture asks you to be someone else. They teach you that authenticity is not a battle. It is a quiet returning again and again to the place within you that has never needed a mask. There comes a moment when the world feels quieter, not because anything outside has changed, but because you have. The painted crowd continues its rhythm. The festival of pretending carries on with familiar brightness. Yet you sense a different kind of light rising within you, something steady, something patient, something that no longer bends to the pressure of fitting in. You watch the people around you move through their roles with practiced grace. Their gestures shine with confidence. Their voices ring with certainty. Their faces glow with the same polished colors you once wore. This sight no longer fills you with sorrow. It no longer makes you feel alone. It simply reminds you of who you used to be before awakening peeled back the layers and revealed a deeper way of living. A strange peace appears in this understanding. You realize that the world is not hostile, it is simply asleep. People cling to their masks because they believe the mask is what keeps them safe. They follow the choreography because it gives them a sense of belonging. They avoid their own truth because the truth asks for a softness they have not yet learned to hold. Your presence becomes different inside this realization. You stand in the same rooms, but you no longer tense at the surface conversations. You no longer ache at the pretending. You carry your clarity the way a lantern carries its flame, bright enough to see your path, soft enough not to blind anyone else. You become a reminder that authenticity can exist without conflict. Some people may sense this quiet shift and draw closer. They feel safe without knowing why. Others may feel exposed and step away. Both responses are natural. You are no longer trying to manage them. You allow every reaction to belong to the person who holds it. You walk gently, knowing that awakening moves through people in its own time. In this calm, you understand something essential. You were never meant to fix the painted world. You were meant to remember the face beneath your own paint. And as you move through life with that remembrance, you become a silent invitation for others to discover their own truth when they are ready. As you reach the end of this reflection, let the message settle gently. You have walked through the noise of a world that rewards pretending. You have looked at the quiet suffering that comes when truth begins to replace performance. You have seen how awakening shifts your place in the rhythm of life. None of this is a burden. It is a sign that your awareness is growing stronger than the culture that surrounds you. Take a moment and feel how your breath moves through you. Notice how the body responds when you stop trying to match the pace of others. There is a softness that appears when you no longer chase approval. There is a calm that rises when you allow yourself to be exactly who you are without shaping your truth to fit the expectations around you. This calm is not accidental. It is the beginning of a new way of moving through the world. Carry this steady awareness with you as you step into the rest of your day. You do not need to announce your authenticity. You do not need to explain your clarity. You only need to return to it whenever you feel yourself drifting. Every small return strengthens the inner space that frees you from the culture of pretending. If this reflection touched something real in you, let it stay with you for a while. Allow the truths that resonated to guide your next quiet moment. And if you feel called to continue exploring this journey, you are welcome to return for tomorrow's reflection. There is more to see, more to understand, more to grow into. Until then, walk gently with yourself. Let your presence speak the truth your voice does not need to carry.